I took the job because Miguel called me 3 times in 1 week. That was pretty much it. The first call I let go to voicemail. The second I picked up and told him I didn't have it. The third time he just called, waited for my voice to finish, and hung up. That was Tuesday. By Thursday, I had a job listing open on my phone and my thumb hovering over apply now for the second time that morning, and it didn't feel like a decision so much as the last off-ramp before the highway ran out. The listing was short. Night auditor. Small motel, Route 25 corridor, New Mexico. $12.50 per hour, full-time nights. No experience required. Must be reliable, able to work alone, comfortable with limited supervision. The last line was the one that got me. Immediate start, housing consideration for right candidate. Elena was $2,300 behind on rent. I knew this because Miguel, her landlord, had my number from 2 years ago when I had co-signed her lease as a favor. At the time, it had seemed reasonable. She was my older sister. She'd just moved to Truth or Consequences to start over after a rough stretch. The apartment was cheap and she had a coffee shop job lined up. I was working retail management, making actual money for once, and the co-signing felt like the kind of thing a decent brother does when he's the one who finally has his feet under him. That retail job was gone now. My feet were not under me, but Miguel still had the number. "She hasn't paid since October," he said, the third time. I was standing in Erin's kitchen at 7 in the morning, watching the coffee maker drip. October, that's 3 months. I need somebody to talk to her, or I start the filing. I'll talk to her. Talking doesn't pay rent. I know that, Miguel. If she's out, you're responsible for the balance. That's the cosign. I knew that too. I said goodbye and sat on Erin's couch with my mug until I pressed the Apply Now button. The phone interview was 2 days later. The woman on the other end sounded like she hadn't slept in several years, that particular flatness that comes from being very competent at something for a long time. She asked if I was comfortable working alone overnight. I said yes. She asked about front desk experience. I told her 4 years in retail management. She asked about transportation. I said I could figure it out. "The motel is half a mile off I-25, she said. Closest town is 17 miles north. You arrange your own arrival and departure. No housing provided, but there's a break room cot if you occasionally need to stay over. That's fine. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. 1 training night with me, then you're on your own. The job has specific procedures, written down. You follow them exactly." She offered me the job before she said goodbye. I wasn't sure if that was because I was the right fit or because no one else had applied. Erin's cousin Mateo drove me down on a Friday evening in November, which meant it was full dark by the time the exit appeared. The sign came up in the headlights like a punchline. Super 8, the red and yellow weathered to pink and beige by however many New Mexico summers. The ramp curved down, and then there was nothing on either side. Flat scrub desert, the hiss of the highway fading behind us, and then the parking lot came into view. 6 cars. Orange sodium lights on tall poles that made everything look wrong, like a photograph taken with bad film. The building was beige-yellow, 2 stories, a long rectangle with exterior walkways on both floors. The pool enclosure on the north side was chained closed. The vending machines near the side entrance glowed blue-white in the dark. Mateo stopped at the edge of the lot and looked at it. "You good?" he said. "Yeah." I grabbed my backpack. "I can wait." "Mateo, I'm fine." I got out and shouldered the bag. "Thanks for the ride." He waited until I was inside before he pulled out. I heard his tires, then the highway sound fading, then nothing except the AC unit above the entrance rattling its steady rattle. I stood in the lobby doorway and looked back at the parking lot and the desert beyond the orange lights. No other building in any direction, no gas station glow, no radio towers blinking. Just flat land and a black sky full of stars, and this one building sitting in the middle of it, like someone had picked up a normal roadside motel and dropped it here by mistake. I went inside. Diane Porter was behind the front desk when I came in. Late 40s, blazer over a dark blouse, hair pulled back. She was looking at the computer screen and didn't glance up immediately. Not rude, just operating at her own pace and not pretending otherwise. "Danny Vasquez," I said. "I know." She looked up, took me in with a quick settling assessment. "You're early. Good. We have a lot to cover." The training moved fast. She walked me through the property management system. Check-in, check-out, audit reports, room status flags. The key card machine, which was older than anything I'd used in retail and needed a second tap sometimes to encode. The back office with 6 camera monitors, parking lot, both walkway levels, breakfast room, back lot near the ice machine and dumpsters, the laundry room, the supply closet, the lockbox mounted flush on the wall behind the desk. "Master key lives in there," she said, tapping it. "Gray metal, combination dial, key lock. You don't open it between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m., not for any reason. What if a guest is locked out? Re-encode their key card. 30 seconds. That's what the machine is for. What if there is no situation between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. where you need the master key? Every question about the master key has the same answer. Re-encode the card." Her tone was settled, the way facts are settled, not harsh, just done negotiating. She showed me the breakfast room. Toaster, coffee station, a chest freezer along the back wall. She didn't mention the freezer. I didn't ask. At 10:45, she stopped at the front desk and pulled a laminated sheet from beneath the counter. She set it down between us and smoothed it flat. Protocol PCRC 788. Threshold Entity Containment, Motel Variant, a numbered list, 9 items. I started reading. "Out loud," Diane said. I looked at her. She watched me without expression. I read it out loud. "Rule 1. No walk-ins after 11:11 p.m. Tell them we're fully booked. Don't check the system. Don't offer alternatives. Rule 2. If the phone rings 3 times, stops, then rings twice more within 30 seconds, do not answer. Let it go to voicemail. Do not listen to the voicemail. Rule 3. Room 209 stays empty every night regardless of what the system shows. If a guest claims they booked it, reassign them, comp the first night, do not go in for any reason. Rule 4. Between 1:13 and 1:26 a.m., do not look at mirrors or reflective surfaces, eyes forward if you need to move. Rule 5. If a guest requests towels between midnight and 6 a.m., deliver exactly 1, no extras, no asking how many they need. Rule 6. Master key stays in the lock box. Don't open between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. Don't give it to anyone. Rule 7. If something on the security monitor looks directly at a camera, cover the screen with the black cloth immediately. Don't look again for 30 minutes. Don't rewind footage. Rule 8. If someone offers a key card from another hotel, freeze it in the ice machine out back. Don't return it. Don't ask questions. Rule 9. If you receive any communication from Diane Porter after 2 a.m., do not respond. When I finished, I set the sheet down. There was a black cloth folded in the monitor alcove that I hadn't noticed before. "Some of these are normal," I said. "Lock procedures, towel counts. Some of these are not." "No," she agreed. "The one about the mirrors." "Yes. And the last one. About you. After 2 a.m., I'm asleep at home, 30 miles from here. I don't contact night staff after 2 a.m. for any reason." A pause. "If you get a text from my number, a call, anything, after 2 a.m., it isn't me. Treat it accordingly." I held that for a moment. Outside, The highway was a faint sound like breathing. "Is this a hazing thing?" I said. "For new hires?" She picked up her blazer and shrugged into it. "Follow these rules exactly as written. Every night. Not approximately. Exactly." She picked up her travel mug. "I'm not trying to scare you. I'm telling you how it is." She was gone by 11. I watched her headlights sweep the lobby windows and vanish south, and then there was nothing but the AC rattling and the clock on the computer reading 11:01 p.m. I sat in the desk chair and looked at the laminated sheet and the monitor bank and the empty lot on the 6 screens. I told myself it was a joke, an elaborate bit passed down through a chain of night auditors, growing more detailed each time. The protocol number was a nice touch. Someone had put in the work. 8 hours. I had 8 hours to get through, and then I could decide in daylight whether I was coming back. I pulled up the audit screen, found the reconciliation function, and started reading through the procedure steps. By 11:10, I had the system mostly figured out and a legal pad with notes on the parts I'd need to revisit. I made a cup of the bad lobby coffee and sat back down. The list sat on the counter. I read it again without meaning to. Then again. I was on the 3rd pass when something knocked on the glass front doors. 2 knocks, deliberate, the sound of knuckles against double-paned glass. I looked up. She was standing outside. Early 30s, I'd guess. Blonde hair pulled back, dark windbreaker, holding a dead phone in both hands with the flat, helpless posture of someone whose battery had just quit. She looked cold. She looked like she'd been driving and had a problem, and the obvious next move was for the person behind the desk to open the door. I was halfway around the desk before I checked the clock. 11:14 p.m. Rule 1, no walk-ins after 11:11 p.m. I stopped. My hand was 3 inches from the door handle. The woman hadn't moved. She was watching me through the glass with mild expectation, the patient look of someone waiting for the obviously correct thing to happen. My heart was doing something unpleasant. I looked at the time, then at the laminated sheet on the counter, then back at her. I pointed at the sheet. The gesture felt absurd, pointing at a piece of laminated paper as an explanation, but I didn't know what else to do. She watched my hand, then looked at my face. Her expression didn't change. That was the first wrong thing. People waiting at a door that doesn't open. They react, they frown, or look confused, or try the handle. She did nothing. That mild expectation just flattened out like something switching off behind her eyes. She breathed on the glass, leaned forward slightly, exhaled through her nose, and a cloud of fog spread across the door's surface in a wide, uneven oval. In the center of the fog, pressed against the glass from the outside, was a handprint. Her hands were at her sides. The handprint was enormous, each finger 7 or 8 inches long. The palm the size of a dinner plate, the kind of hand that shouldn't belong to a human being, pressed flat and clear as a signature against the glass. She turned and walked. Not quickly, not slowly. A straight line along the exterior of the building, past the first window and the second, her profile moving through the orange light and then past the edge of the glow. At the scrubland where the asphalt ended, she was simply gone. Not a dramatic vanishing. The dark just didn't have her in it anymore. The handprint was still on the glass. The fog around it was already fading. The print remained. I looked at the clock. 11:14 p.m. The whole thing had taken 2 minutes. I sat back down in the desk chair. My coffee was still warm. I wrapped both hands around it and looked at the fading print and thought about several things, carefully and in order, and came to no conclusions. The phone rang at 11:17. 2 rings, a stop, then 1 ring. I counted the pattern without touching it. Not rule 2, that was 3 rings. Pause, 2 rings, but close enough that my hand stayed in my lap. The reservation system chimed 30 seconds later with the pleasant sound it made for new bookings. I looked at the screen. New reservation. Arrival tonight. 11:17 p.m. Name field, blank. Room 209. I sat very still. Then I pulled up room management and flagged 209 as out of order. Maintenance required, do not assign. The system accepted the change. I went back to the reservation screen. The reservation was gone. Not canceled, gone. No cancellation notice, no modified status, no entry in the change log. The screen showed the same check-in list it had shown before the chime, with 209 flagged out of order and everything else as it had been. Like it had never been there. I looked at the blank space on the screen where the name field had been. I looked at the handprint on the glass, nearly invisible now, the fog completely gone. The print itself, 5 long lines and a wide palm, was still faintly there, would probably be there until someone cleaned the glass. I turned back to the audit screen and got back to work. 11:22 p.m., 6 hours and 38 minutes left. I kept my eyes off the glass. The first hour was the hardest part, and then midnight came and reset the clock. I'd spent the stretch between 11:22 and midnight doing the audit work, reconciling checkouts, running the nightly balance, logging the 2 guests already checked in. Room 108, a trucker named Reeves, wake-up call at 5, paid cash. Room 214, reservation under C. Alderman, one night, no car in the lot I could match to the name. I noted that and moved on. The work was simple once you understood the rhythm. Watch things on screens, write them down. At 11:50 I walked the ground floor, side exit locked, deadbolt thrown. Laundry room, 2 machines idle, 1 forgotten load, dry in the drum. Supply closet, 23 towels on the shelf, folded in thirds, no load needed. I went back to the desk. The AC hummed. The desert outside the windows was dark. The motel was too far off the highway for traffic noise to carry. There were stretches of the last hour where I'd completely forgotten the road existed. I sat with the rule sheet on the counter, and the 6 camera feeds running and the clock ticking over to midnight, and I ran the camera check. Parking lot, 6 cars, no movement. Both walkways, empty. Breakfast room, empty. Back lot, ice machine running, dumpsters, desert beyond the floodlights. The handprint was still on the front glass, visible on the lobby feed, 5 faint smears catching the sodium light at a low angle. I was still watching the backlot monitor when the front doors opened. I heard it before I saw it. The hydraulic exhale of the door mechanism, the sound it only makes when the door actually swings. I looked up. A man was already inside, standing 6 feet from the front desk with his hands loose at his sides, wearing green hospital scrubs and a lanyard with a badge clipped to it. He hadn't knocked. He wasn't coming through the door the way people come through doors. He was just there, the way furniture is there. Evening. Stephen Thompson, County EMS, got a report of a gas smell at this location. Need to do a quick sweep of the rooms. I looked at his badge. The photo was blurred, not scratched, not water damaged. The image itself was indistinct, every feature smeared just enough that you couldn't hold any of it. The name read Stephen Though, and then the plastic went wrong, ink spreading sideways like it had gotten wet from the inside and never dried. I haven't smelled anything, I said. That's normal at low concentrations. You'd only smell it once it was already dangerous. He smiled, assembled correctly. If you give me the master key, I can do a room-by-room check and be out of your way in 20 minutes. Rule 6. I can't give out the master key, I said. Motel policy. This is a safety situation. I'm authorized to request access. I'll call the fire department, I said. They can coordinate with you. Something happened to his face, not a change I could name, more like the light behind it went somewhere else. The smile was still technically there, still arranged correctly, But whatever had been running, it stepped back, and what was left was a face with no one in it. The same quality the woman at the door had had when I'd pointed at the rule sheet. "You always this difficult?" "Pretty much." He stood for a few more seconds. His eyes made a slow scan of the lobby that ended at the hallway behind the desk and stopped there. Then he turned and walked out. In the parking lot, he moved in a straight line, past the cars, past the sodium lights, past the pavement's edge. He walked into the desert scrub at the same pace he'd crossed the lobby, without slowing at the point where the asphalt ended. The dark took him. Same path as the woman. Nearly the same line. I wrote 1203, Scrubs, master key request, refused, departed on the legal pad. Added, same path as 1114 woman. I underlined it and looked at it for a moment. The desk phone rang at 12:37. 1 ring, stop, 2 rings. Not rule 2, that was 3 stop 2. Close, but not the pattern. The message light blinked once and went dark. I didn't listen to the voicemail. The call for towels came in at 12:51. The guest line lit up. Room 214. I picked up. Towels. 1 word, nothing after it. The voice was flat in a way I was starting to recognize. Not the flatness of someone too tired to bother with courtesy, but something more fundamental. A voice with nothing particular behind it. Sure, be right up. 1 towel from the supply closet, folded in thirds, still warm from the dryer vent heat running through the shelf. I held it under my arm and called the elevator. The second floor smelled different, heavier, damper, like air that had been enclosed for a long time. The lights ran yellow up here, the quality of bulbs close to the end of their life. I stepped out and started down the hall. Same doors, same placards, same carpet gap at each threshold. The AC units between rooms held their continuous hum. The door was open an inch, not half latched, deliberately open, held that way. A thin, dark line between the door and the frame. Cold came through that inch, not conditioned air, something older and deeper, root cellar cold, the cold of a space that had been cold for a long time and had no intention of warming. And underneath it, a smell. Lake water, algae, the dark, organic mud smell of standing water that never sees direct light. I kept walking, eyes forward, not slowing. 211, 213. I knocked on 214. A pause of 5 or 6 seconds. The door opened 6 inches. A hand came through. Pale, not sick pale, but a settled, deliberate absence of color. Narrow fingers, 7 or 8 silver rings on them. Plain, identical bands, no stones, stacked from the base, knuckle upward. The weight of that many rings on one hand should have been visible in how it moved. The hand moved like it didn't notice. I placed the towel in the hand. The fingers closed slowly, with a precision that didn't look like taking a towel so much as confirming a transaction had been completed correctly. The hand withdrew. The door latched. No face, no voice after the 1 word on the phone. I stood in the hallway for a moment. My heart was doing the thing it had been doing since 11:14, just fast enough to notice. Then I checked my phone. 1:12 a.m. Rule 4 in 60 seconds. I looked up. At the far end of the hall, the narrow horizontal window faced the exterior walkway. In daylight, it would let in sky. At 1:12 in the morning, with yellow lights behind me, it was black glass, a mirror. I could see the hallway in it, the line of doors, the ceiling, the carpet, and me standing outside 214 with my phone in my hand. 113. I dropped my gaze to the carpet and started moving. 213, 211. The cold gap of 209 coming up on my right. I felt it before I reached the door, a 3-foot band of cold air, like stepping through a threshold in empty air, the lake water smell with it. I held my breath until I was through, counted 3 steps, exhaled. Behind me, something moved. Not footsteps. A heavy drag, then a shifting. Furniture moved by something that didn't need to be careful about noise. A clunk, another drag, then a long scrape along the wall that tracked parallel to my movement and kept pace with me. I kept my eyes on the carpet and walked faster. I found the stairwell door by feel, shoulder pushed through it. Concrete and dust. Ordinary building smells, the kind that don't mean anything. One flight down, ground floor door, through it. 1:15. 2 minutes inside the window. Back at the desk, I put my phone face up on the counter and kept my eyes on anything flat and matte. The rule sheet, the keyboard, the legal pad. The sounds from upstairs had stopped when I hit the stairs. I wrote 113 to 115, second floor, sounds during Rule 4 window, tracking, and underlined it once. 126. Window closed. I let out a breath I'd been managing in careful increments for 13 minutes. At 127, I checked the monitors. 5 feeds clear. The 6th, back lot, showed Jane and Thompson. I'd given the woman the name Jane in my head because she needed one. She and Thompson were standing between the dumpsters, facing each other at about 4 feet. Mouths closed, arms at their sides. The stillness of objects placed in a room, not of people choosing to stand. At exactly the same moment, simultaneously, not one then the other, both of them turned and looked directly at the camera, not at the monitor, at the lens. They tilted their faces upward to find it at the same moment with the same precision, and the screen did something I couldn't call a glitch or static. It was more like the image briefly stopped being a recording and became something else. A window rather than a monitor, with something on the other side doing the looking. I grabbed the desk blotter and covered the monitor. Rule 7 said black cloth. The cloth was in the alcove 12 inches from the screen, which was 12 inches more than I was willing to get to a screen that was doing that. The blotter was matte green cardboard and it covered the feed completely. I pressed it flat and wedged it against the housing. 1:29, 30 minutes of blind monitoring. I looked at the ceiling and thought about what was probably still happening on that feed. Then I decided I was fine not knowing. I'd seen enough. At 1:38, the phone rang twice, stopped, then once, two-stop 1. Still not Rule 2. Message light blinked, went dark. I didn't touch it. Something slid under the back office door. Pushed slowly, deliberately. The motion of something guided rather than dropped. A white-faced rectangle of plastic, keycard dimensions came through the door gap and settled about a foot inside the office. No sound of anything pulling back, no shadow in the gap below the door. I used a pen as a lever, Best Western Albuquerque, standard logo, magnetic stripe on the back, one diagonal scratch across it. Rule 8. I carried it on the pen to the breakfast room, lifted the freezer lid, rows of key cards, sorted by brand the way you sort things you've been adding to over a long time. Holiday Inn Express on the left, maybe 15 deep, Motel 6 in the center, Marriott, Best Western. 2 brands I didn't recognize, laid flat, face up, organized with a care that implied months of additions. Years, possibly. 40 cards, maybe 50, each one a flat rectangle of cold plastic with a hotel name on it. I placed the Best Western card in its column and lowered the lid. I stood with my hand on the freezer for a moment, doing the math. 40 cards minimum. 40 separate nights of someone doing exactly what I'd just done. Picking up a card with a pen, walking it here, placing it in the correct column. Someone had been building these rows long before I showed up. Someone had sorted them, maintained them, kept the columns neat. I went back to the desk. At 1:59, the phone rang 3 times. Stopped. Then twice more. I sat with my hands in my lap and counted each ring and counted the pause. 3. Stop. 2. Within 30 seconds of the stop. Rule 2. Exact pattern. I did not answer. I watched the message light blink on and I did not move toward the phone. 30 seconds later, the front door handle moved. Not the door, The lever handle on the interior side. Up, hold, down, then again, up, hold, down. The motion of someone working it from outside, but the lock wasn't turning and the door wasn't moving. Just the handle, cycling through the same motion 3 more times at even intervals. Then it stopped. I wrote the time, 2 a.m. Drew a line under it. My phone buzzed. Text, name on the screen, Diane Porter. Hey, sorry to bother you. Can you check the fire extinguisher mount by room 214 when you get a chance? Front desk reported it was loose last week and I forgot to follow up. Shouldn't take more than a minute. Time on my phone, 2:04 a.m. Rule 9. I was already moving toward the elevator, some cooperative employee reflex that processes a reasonable request before the rest of your brain catches up. I got to the edge of the lobby and stopped. I went back to the desk, photographed the rule sheet. All 9 rules, full page, sharp enough to read every word. Sent it to Diane's number with no message, just the image. 20 seconds. My phone buzzed. A photo, taken from above and behind the front desk, angled down from near the ceiling behind the monitor bank. In it, the desk chair faced the dark hallway. Someone sat in the chair, head forward, eyes closed, hands loose in the lap. Same gray hoodie, same dark jeans. My backpack on the floor to the left of the chair, logo facing up. Timestamp, 2:03 a.m. I was standing, both hands on the phone, fully awake at the front edge of the desk. I turned and looked at the chair, empty, facing the lobby, the way I'd left it when I stood up. In the photo, the chair faced the hallway. I looked at the photo for a long time. My hands went cold, not from anything in the room, just cold, the blood deciding it had somewhere else to be. I blocked the number, sat down in the chair, facing the lobby, and put both hands flat on the desk. 2:07 a.m. 4 hours and 53 minutes left. The message light was still blinking. The photo was still on my phone at 2:07 a.m. when I put both hands flat on the desk and tried to think clearly. The message light blinked its patient red rhythm. I didn't touch it. I'd let Rule 2 stand at 1:59. I was going to let the voicemail sit. What I needed was to keep following everything else, get to 7 a.m., collect a check, and never come back. I sat with that plan for about 3 minutes before the lights changed. Not off, not a power failure. They dimmed, exactly halfway, as if someone had found a dimmer switch somewhere and settled it at 50% and held it there. The room changed with it. What had been ordinary fluorescent pallor became something closer to the light in a place where the walls are pressing inward. The shadows in the hallway behind the desk deepened. The breakfast room doorway went dark enough that I couldn't see the back counter. The AC stopped, mid-cycle, not winding down, cut off between one moment and the next. The silence it left behind had mass. Then I heard the footsteps, down the hallway from the direction of the breakfast room or somewhere further back past the area the cameras covered. Slow footsteps, careful ones, the particular pace of something that moves how it wants to move, not how the situation requires. One step, a pause long enough to breathe through, then another. I looked at the ground floor hallway monitor, the corridor feed that covered the path from the back of the building to the front desk area. Empty carpet, empty walls, the laundry room door closed at the far end, the timestamp ticking correctly in the corner. Nothing in the frame moving. The footsteps kept coming. I could hear the carpet compressing under each one, that soft, dense sound of weight pressing motel carpet down, the individual fibers flattening. Under it, a faint creak of floorboard, the building settling under something heavy, moving slowly across it. 20 feet out and getting closer, and the camera between us showed nothing but corridor. I had stopped breathing sometime around the third step. I made myself take a slow, controlled one. The salt packets were in the breakfast room, a wire caddy on the coffee station counter, the kind that holds single-serve packets of salt and pepper and sugar for the free breakfast that ran from 6 to 9, and that I'd never see because I was going to be gone by then. My mother had kept salt on the thresholds of every door in the house I grew up in, fresh every winter, re-poured after anything unusual. My grandmother's position was that there were things you kept outside and that salt was how you reminded them of the boundary. I'd always thought of it as the kind of old belief that doesn't survive contact with the actual world. That night, I thought of it as the only thing available to me, so I moved. Fast through the breakfast room doorway, to the counter, 11 packets in the caddy. I took all of them and went back to the office threshold, the doorway between the front office and the lobby corridor, and I tore them open one by one, pouring a continuous line across the full width of the opening. My hands were steadier than I had any right to expect. The line wasn't thick, 11 packets was barely enough for thin, but it was unbroken from one side of the frame to the other. I finished the last packet and stood up. The footsteps stopped. I waited at the office side of the line, listening. 5 seconds. 10. The hallway was fully still, but the air on the other side of the threshold was different than the office air, cooler by several degrees, heavier, carrying that faint organic note I'd been cataloging since the second floor. Lake water, still and airless, something that had no business being in a carpeted corridor off I-25. Then the footsteps started again, slower this time, a deliberate approach, right to the office door, stopping close. Close enough that if there had been a person on the other side, I would have been able to hear them breathing. I couldn't hear breathing. I put my back against the wall beside the desk. The doorknob turned, slowly. The latch cylinder rotating in its housing, the mechanism engaging, moving toward the point of release. It reached where the door would have swung clear of the frame, and stopped. The salt line held. The door didn't move. The knob returned to neutral. A pause. Then it turned again, harder this time, a full rotation, the door rattling in its frame from the force applied to it. Still didn't open. From the other side came something that was not quite impact and not quite pressure. Something large applying itself to the surface all at once, the frame shuddering with it. The salt line held. From further down the hall, a low vibration moved through the air before it became sound. Then it became sound. Then it became a voice. Danny, Diane Porter's voice. The match was exact. Not close, not approximate, exact. The tone she used when she was being careful and efficient and slightly worried. The cadence she had when she said something once and expected it to register. I'd heard it for 3 hours during training, and I would have known it anywhere. Danny, it's Diane. Let me in. I didn't answer. I didn't move my feet. I know you followed the rules. That was right. You did the right thing. A measured pause, the length and placement of it correct for the person it was impersonating. But something happened tonight that's outside what the rules cover. I need to be in there with you to sort it out. Just open the door. The salt was blackening. Not all at once, from the right end of the line progressively toward the left, as if something invisible was moving along it from outside and leaving a dark trace where it made contact. The white granules going dark in a slow advance, the way moisture travels through sand, except nothing I could see was producing it. Your sister, said quietly, the way you say the thing you know will land. Elena. She's $2,300 behind. Miguel keeps calling you. A pause. I know what's in your account, Danny. $38 and change. The exact amount. Not approximately, exactly. $38 and the change I hadn't bothered to track because it didn't matter when you only had 38. Open the door, and none of it has to be a problem. I can sort out the money situation from where I'm standing. The voice had shifted by a fraction, not wrong enough to locate precisely, but slightly off the way. A recording of a voice sounds different from the voice itself, the difference between the real thing and a very good copy of it. The rules are for normal nights. Tonight is not a normal night. Things got out of hand. I'm trying to help you. The salt was 2/3 black. I looked at the line and I looked at the door and I kept my mouth shut and my feet still and I breathed slowly. Then the voice moved, repositioned from the hallway to the lobby, same voice, no transition, just present somewhere else. and the register shifted again. Diane's voice on the surface and something running underneath it at a frequency that belonged to neither voices nor machines. The freezer, running at those two levels simultaneously, top and bottom, one of them language and one of them something older than language. You were supposed to keep the freezer full. That was your whole job. The cards stay frozen. That was all you had to do. I moved before I finished processing it. Over the salt line, through the door, into the hallway, turning toward the breakfast room. The voice kept talking, but I wasn't listening to it anymore. I grabbed a trash bag from under the counter. I crossed to the freezer and threw the lid up. Cold hit me across the face. I reached in with both hands. I didn't try to be careful. I scooped in handfuls. Holiday Inn, Motel 6, Marriott, the two unrecognized brands, all of them cold and slick, and dumped them into the bag. Then another handful. The sorted columns I'd noted at 138 dissolved. I didn't care about the organization. The whole left side Holiday Inn stack, the Motel 6 center, the Best Western with the new card I'd added on top. I ran my palms along the freezer bottom to catch anything that had slid loose to the edges. The last card was a Holiday Inn Express. Logo worn from years in the cold, the red faded to a dull orange. It was from somewhere in Texas. The address partly visible on the back. It hit the bottom of the bag. The building erupted. Lights to full brightness and beyond. Every fluorescent burning past its rated output, bleaching the surfaces, flattening every shadow. The ice machine outside shrieked at a volume I hadn't known it was capable of, a sustained roar coming through the back wall. Upstairs, doors slamming down the second-floor corridor, one after another, the percussion of them landing hard in sequence. The front doors rattled in their frame. The elevator dinged, once, then again immediately, then again and again in a loop. The display cycling floors with nothing calling it. The voice in the lobby laughed, not Diane's laugh, not using Diane's voice anymore. Several registers lower, flat, the sound of something that has been patient for a very long time and has given up on patience. It was built from the architecture of a laugh, same shape, same duration, but the material was wrong all the way through. The rules only kept you useful. No raised voice, just fact. Every card in that freezer, cold and ready. That was your function here. The elevator dinged 3 more times. Room 209 is waiting. You should go see what you've been keeping out all this time. I did not go to room 209. I stood in the breakfast room with the bag in my hands and the freezer empty behind me, and I understood what I'd been part of. The freezer wasn't protection. The sorted columns, the careful maintenance, 40-odd cards in their organized rows. That was never a barrier. It was a bribe. You give something that wants everything a portion of what it wants, and it stays in its room. Every card was a person the hanged man had marked, travelers who'd passed through, stopped in the lot, looked at a window at the wrong angle, received some invisible claim they drove away not knowing was on them. The freezer kept them cold and available. The hanged man kept its patience. The night auditor kept the cards frozen and stayed at the desk, and the arrangement held. The cards were not a defense, they were a payment. And the night auditor was not a guardian. The night auditor was a caretaker for the thing that was owed. I had just emptied the account. I tied the bag shut and carried it back to the office. I stepped over the salt line, every grain of it fully black from end to end, the white completely gone, and sat down in the desk chair with the bag on my lap. I put both arms around it. The building's tantrum continued. Ice machine roaring outside, lights burning wrong, elevator cycling, upstairs doors slamming at irregular intervals. From somewhere without a fixed location, the walls, the air, nowhere in particular, voices muttered. Not words I could separate, just sound at the frequency of language, the way a motel sounds when every room has a TV running too low to understand. I did not respond to any of it. The audit report printed at 3 a.m. The computer chimed, the page fed out onto the desk. I left it where it landed. Diane would deal with it. At 3:30, the ice machine was still running. At 3:51, still running. One upstairs door slammed at 4:02, hard enough that I felt it through the floor. At 4:09, a slow dragging from directly overhead. a line of sound moving from above the area of 209 toward the stairwell, then stopping. It moved once and did not move again. At 4:15, everything stopped at the same time, not one thing at a time. All of it. Ice machine, wrong brightness, voices, doors, landing back into silence together, the way a hand comes flat on a table and ends something. The AC kicked back on. The lights returned to standard. The elevator display read L and held. I sat in the chair with the bag and did not move. The silence that followed was different from the silence before 2:07. Before, the ordinary quiet of a motel had carried underneath it the sense that something was deciding. This was the quiet after a decision had been made and the making of it was finished. I could tell the difference. I don't know how, but I could. 5 a.m. came. The clock turned over. I watched the lobby feed and the parking lot feed in the dark outside the front glass. The handprint on the glass was faint in the early light. The 6 cars in the lot hadn't moved. A truck passed on the highway at 5:40. First vehicle sound I'd heard all night. Loud, briefly, then gone. I kept both arms around the bag and waited for Diane. The voicemail from 159 was still on the desk phone. I was going to leave it for her. My phone lay face down on the desk, with a photo of me asleep at 2:03 a.m. still on it, the chair facing the hallway. I didn't look at it again. The pre-dawn blue outside turned incrementally toward gray and then toward something that was almost light. The sodium lamps were still running their orange pallor against it, dimmer now in comparison, the desert scrub beyond the lot edge acquiring outlines. The parking lot surfaces went from featureless dark to visible texture. Everything looked provisional in that light, like the world taking stock of itself before committing to another day. 6:07 a.m., a key in the front door. The key turned in the front door at 6:07 a.m. I heard it before I saw the handle move. The specific metallic sound of a key worked in a deadbolt. The 2-stage click of the cylinder releasing. Not the handle moving on its own. Not the hydraulic exhale of the door being pushed from outside. A key in a lock, turning the way keys turn when someone who belongs somewhere uses them. Diane Porter came through the door. She was wearing dark slacks and a white button-down. Her blazer folded over her left forearm, a travel mug in her right hand. She moved the way a person moves at 6 in the morning who has been moving at 6 in the morning for a long time, deliberately, without hurry, with the economy of someone who has stopped wasting steps on things that don't require them. She let the door close behind her and walked to the front desk. She stopped. She was looking at the salt line. What was left of it? A black smear across the full width of the office threshold, every grain of salt darkened from one end of the doorframe to the other, the way a match head looks after it's been struck. She stood with her travel mug at her side and looked at it for a long time without saying anything. Then she looked at me. I was in the desk chair with the trash bag on my lap, both arms around it, in the same position I'd been in since approximately 2:37 a.m. My back hurt. My hands had gone stiff from 4 hours of holding the bag. I was awake in the specific way you're awake at the end of a night you didn't sleep through. Not tired exactly, just hollowed out, the way a room feels after everyone has left it and the air settles back to neutral. Diane looked at the salt line again, then at the bag. She set her travel mug on the counter, folded her blazer over the back of the desk chair beside the computer, and walked around the counter into the office. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't ask if I was all right, or how the night had gone, or whether anything unusual had occurred. She looked at the bag in my lap for a moment, taking stock of it, and then she held out her hand. I gave it to her. She carried the bag outside through the side exit, the one that opened onto the narrow strip of pavement between the building and the desert edge. I watched through the office window. There was a metal trash can against the exterior wall under the overhang, the kind with the hinged lid painted black, the base stained with years of use. She set the bag down beside it, lifted the lid, and transferred the contents directly into the can. The key cards clacked and rustled as they fell. Dozens of plastic rectangles in a loose pile at the bottom. The organized columns from the freezer now just debris. She reached into her pocket and came out with a lighter. She held the flame at the lip of the can. The cards caught slowly at first, plastic curling and darkening at the edges before the flame found something to work with. And then they were burning properly, a low orange fire filling the base of the can, sending up a thin gray column of smoke into the still morning air. Diane stepped back one pace, crossed her arms, and stood watching. The smoke column rose straight up in the windless air. Behind her, the desert was flat and pale in the low morning light, the scrub brush casting long shadows westward. The sodium lights on the parking lot poles had clicked off when the sun came up, and without their orange cast, everything looked its real color for the first time since I'd arrived the night before. She stood there for 5 minutes, maybe a little longer. I watched from the window, and she didn't move, except to tilt the lighter back into her pocket once it was clear the fire had taken. When the smoke column thinned to almost nothing, she dropped the lid back on the can, stood there one more moment as if making sure, and then she came back inside. She walked directly to the office and stood in the doorway, on the lobby side of the blackened salt line, not crossing it, and looked at the line again with the same unhurried attention she'd given it the first time. "The freezer has to stay full," she said. Her voice was quiet. Not angry, not accusatory, just tired in the way that goes all the way down, below the surface of the voice, the kind of tired that's been there long enough it's stopped being a feeling and become a condition. I stood up from the chair slowly, my back tightening through the full movement. "I quit," I said. Diane looked at me, not surprised, not disappointed. She looked at me the way she'd looked at the salt line, gathering information, processing it, not making more of it than it was. She nodded once and walked to the computer. The printer ran for about 30 seconds. Diane tore the sheet off cleanly and set it on the counter facing me without comment. A timesheet, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 7.5 hours at $12.50, $93.75 before taxes. The motel's name printed at the top, her signature at the bottom, the date in the corner. "Direct deposit takes 2 weeks," she said. "I'll cut you a check today. You can pick it up tomorrow, or I can mail it." "Mail it," I said. She wrote something on a sticky note, Aaron's address, the one I'd put on the job application, the couch I was going back to, tore it off the pad, and put it in her breast pocket without showing it to me. She logged me out of the system. The screen returned to the login page. My session was closed. I picked up my backpack from the floor beside the chair. I took my jacket from the hook behind the desk. I picked up my phone. The photo of me asleep at 2:03 a.m. still in the camera roll, and put it in my pocket without looking at it. I went to the door. Then I stopped, because I'd been thinking about it for the last 2 hours, and there wasn't going to be a better moment. "Your husband," I said. "What happened to your husband?" She was back at the keyboard, entering something. She didn't stop typing. "He followed a rule wrong," she said. "It happened in February, 8 months ago." She kept typing. The sentence had no excess in it. No explanation offered, no detail volunteered, no emotional frame around the fact. The implication was complete and self-contained. I stood with it for a moment and understood I was not going to ask which rule, or how exactly wrong, or what following a rule wrong looked like from the outside. Whatever it looked like, she had seen it. She was still here. She was still making the drive every morning to unlock the front door at 6:07 a.m. "I'm sorry," I said. "Mail's fine," she said. "I have the address." I pushed through the front door. The morning outside was cold and clear. October dessert cold, the kind that sits in the air without wind and makes everything smell like distance. The parking lot was ordinary in full daylight. The 6 cars still in their spots from the night before, the sodium lamps pale and useless against the risen sun. The motel's beige-yellow exterior looking in honest daylight, exactly like what it was supposed to look like. A roadside motel. Functional, forgettable, the kind that exists in the space between somewhere and somewhere else. I walked the access road and called Aaron at 6:45 a.m. He answered on the fourth ring, voice thick with sleep. "Hey. Yeah, what?" A pause. "Danny, I need a ride." "From where?" The rustle of sheets, the slow wakefulness of someone being asked for something unexpected before 7 a.m. I gave him the exit. I-25, the motel sign, he'd see it from the highway. "You okay?" he said. "I need a ride," I said again. "Give me an hour," he said. "I'll get Mateo's car." I did not look back at the building. That was a decision I made consciously, standing on the access road with my backpack. The motel was 200 feet behind me, and I was not going to turn around and look at it. The reason I could have given, if pressed, was this. Looking back at things you've left felt like a category of invitation I was permanently done issuing. I stood at the shoulder of the highway and waited. Trucks went past heading north, then a gap, then a flatbed with pipe, then a long stretch of nothing. The sun climbed and the desert warmed incrementally. The scrub brush went from gray-shadowed to its actual color, a dusty olive gray. The sky was a flat, clean blue, with no weather in it. Everything in every direction was ordinary, and I was grateful for that, without being able to say it out loud. I thought about Elena. She'd been in the back of my mind all night. Not forgotten, just tabled, deferred to something after survival. The $93.75 wasn't going to solve anything. The money problems were still money problems. I was still broke and still on Aaron's couch, and still the person who had taken this job because the alternative was worse. Nothing about the night had changed any of that. What I had instead was the specific, unglamorous fact that I had sat in a chair from 2:37 a.m. to 6:07 a.m. with a trash bag on my lap and not opened a door when a voice that sounded exactly like someone I trusted told me to open it. That was the whole sum of what I'd done. It didn't feel like surviving. It felt like not doing something. Mateo's tan sedan appeared from the north at 7:51 a.m. Same dented car that had dropped me here 11 hours ago. It pulled onto the shoulder in front of me. Aaron got out of the passenger side, looked at me once, and didn't say anything. He opened the back door. I put my backpack in and got in after it. Mateo gave me a nod in the mirror. We pulled back onto I-25 heading north. Aaron didn't ask questions and I didn't offer anything. Mateo had the radio on low, something country and indistinct. I watched New Mexico go past the window. The desert flat on both sides, exit signs appearing at regular intervals, the road running straight north with nothing wrong with any of it. Socorro appeared on the right at late morning. We stopped at a gas station. Mateo got coffee. Aaron got a bag of chips, handed one back into the seat without looking. I ate 3 chips and held the bag. Somewhere between the gas station and the on-ramp, I took out my phone and went to my contacts. Diane Porter. I blocked the number. The contact went gray. I didn't delete the photo. My thumb hovered over the delete option for a moment, and then I put the phone back in my pocket. Evidence of something I had no one to show and nothing to do with. Filed somewhere I didn't have to open. We got back to Albuquerque by mid-afternoon. Aaron's apartment was exactly as I'd left it, the couch, the spare blanket folded on the armrest where I'd put it the morning before. The world had continued without incident in every direction except the one I'd been pointed in all night. I sat on the couch. Aaron made coffee and set a mug on the table in front of me and went back to the kitchen without asking if I wanted it. The check from Diane arrived Wednesday, $93.75, a personal check, her signature, no return address except a Socorro zip code. I cashed it at a check cashing place near Aaron's and walked out with $89.75 after the fee. Miguel called 2 more times that week. I answered the second call and told him Elena would have something by end of month. He accepted it the way he accepted everything, without warmth or enthusiasm. The money problems continued being money problems, which was what they'd been doing since before any of this started. I found overnight inventory work at a distribution warehouse the following week. $14 an hour, 5 nights a week. Nothing unusual about the job, nothing unusual ever happened there. I stayed 4 months, found a room to rent in February. Life continued the way life continues when it doesn't stop. One thing following another, the problems staying in roughly the same shape while the specific details shifted. I never went back to the motel. I'm not going to tell you it changed everything, or that I understood something new about the world that made me different afterward. Mostly what I understood was this: there are places that are wrong in ways that predate every building built on them, every road cut past them, every person who has ever stopped there. The motel on Route 25 is one of those places. It was wrong before 1973 when the Super 8 went up on that quarter mile of desert, and it will be wrong after the building is eventually gone. The hanged man was there before the asphalt and the construction and the sign with the star and the vacancy light. He was there pushing against the door before anyone built a room over it. He will be there after the room is gone, pushing at whatever is left. The rules held the door closed. The night auditor maintained the rules. The freezer kept the hanged man patient, and the arrangement continued night after night, year after year, because the alternative was something nobody was prepared to deal with, and there was nothing useful to say about any of it out loud. The freezer is filling up again. Someone is sitting at that desk tonight with the rule sheet on the counter, watching the cameras, logging the checkouts. Someone is going to hear a knock on the glass at 11:12 and check the time and not open the door. The hanged man is in room 209, standing at the door with his enormous hands and his broken neck and the smooth blank space where his face should be, pushing at it the way he has been pushing at it since 1884, the way he will keep pushing at it as long as there is someone on the other side to push back. Some doors, once you know they're there, you spend the rest of your life making sure you never open them. The hanged man is still waiting in room 209. The freezer is filling up again with someone else's hands. And somewhere out on that highway, Jane and Stephen Thompson are still walking toward the next motel, the next night auditor, the next set of rules they'll try to make someone break. I don't think about it. That's the trick. You just don't think about it.